Continuation of Chapter 7. Third Liberty, Freedom to Teach. Leo XIII moves on to another liberty, graver still, the freedom of teaching, which extends to the formation of youth. Quote, "A like judgment must be passed upon what is called liberty of teaching. There can be no doubt that truth alone should imbue the minds of men, for in it are found the well-being, the end, and the perfection of every intelligent nature, and therefore nothing but truth should be taught." End quote. Here is an evident principle, the golden rule of teaching. Quote, "For this reason, it is plainly the duty of all who teach to banish error from the mind, and by sure safeguards to close the entry to all false convictions. From this it follows, as is evident, that the liberty of which we have been speaking is greatly opposed to reason, and tends absolutely to pervert men's minds, inasmuch as it claims for itself the right of teaching whatever it pleases, a liberty which the state cannot grant without failing in its duty. And the more so because the authority of teachers has great weight with their hearers, who can rarely decide for themselves as to the truth or falsehood of the instructions given to them. Wherefore this liberty also, in order that it may deserve the name, must be kept within certain limits, lest the office of teaching be turned with impunity into an instrument of corruption." End quote. If we glance at the teaching currently administered in the schools, and even in self-styled Catholic schools, we cannot help but be horrified by the constant evolution in the teaching which is teaching no longer. And this is true at every level. It is the students who propound ideas and discuss them. The professors guide the conversation, but teach nothing. A counterfeit education is installed, and every new year brings a lowering of the standards. Audiovisual aids can be helpful in certain cases, but they exercise the visual memory rather than the intellect. The children accumulate impressions, but they do not assimilate, reflect, reason. The rational faculty is weakened. A pope like Leo XIII would make a serious critique of modern education. Quote, "Now truth, which should be the only subject matter of those who teach, is of two kinds, natural and supernatural." End quote. That is, truth known by reason and truth known by faith. Both sciences must be taught. Quote, "On this, as on a firm basis, morality, justice, religion, and the very bonds of human society rest." End quote. The benefits of Christian philosophy. The Pope continues by saying that the Church has received especially the mission of teaching. Quote, "Go and teach all the nations." Matthew 28:19. The governors should take this into consideration, for the universities built over the centuries, where eminent professors taught, were truly admirable, and added immeasurably to the glory of the Church and Christian civilization. Imagine what the Sorbonne must have been at the time of St. Albert the Great, and St. Thomas Aquinas, of St. Ignatius and St. Francis Xavier. Imagine the saints like St. Bonaventure, who went to the Sorbonne, who were formed by these universities and who studied there true philosophy, the true faith. Now what is taught at the Sorbonne? A couple of friends at the university report that, at the most, there are 2 or 3 professors of philosophy who are not communists. And this in a university founded by the Church and sanctified by her for so many centuries. The communists have come to roost there like cuckoos, birds that intrude in the nests of other birds. The revolutionaries have taken over everything: the bishoprics, the schools, the buildings, the hospitals. They are set up in handsome edifices that they did not build, even if subsequently they developed them. In a free anti-communist Catholic university like that of Guadalajara in Mexico, where there are more than 30,000 students, 10,000 Mexicans and 20,000 foreigners, there is no department of philosophy or theology. What kind of anti-communism can be taught in such conditions? It must be very rudimentary. News about worldwide communism, meetings, congresses. But all this lacks the philosophical foundation. For want of chairs of philosophy and theology, it is not possible to make known the ideal that should exist and replace communism, which is precisely the social reign of our Lord Jesus Christ. If the faculty does not present that which gives society a normal life, a veritable morality, the natural law, social law, what are they doing? With what will they replace totalitarian society, if they do not know what a Christian society is, and even philosophically what society is, and what laws ought to govern the natural social order? This is what we have come to, an educational void. Hence the importance of our seminaries. The priests we are forming will soon be the only persons to know the true philosophical principles, which are not our principles, nor those of Father so-and-so, nor of some professor or other, but those of the Church. Thomist philosophy has been rejected, despite the incessant reminders of the popes that the Church has made it her own, to such a degree that one speaks of St. Thomas Aquinas as the common doctor. It is philosophy by the light of faith in accord with truth. It is to this doctrine that most encyclicals refer. If we want to know reality, the world, the essence of things, all that God has created, we must immerse ourselves in the philosophy of St. Thomas, the philosophy of common sense. How admirable this philosophy is, and nowadays how rejected. It is rejected even in Rome at the Gregorian, and the Angelique, and at the Lateran. What will future priests and bishops know in truth? They are going to be modernists from the start, for in the seminaries they are taught Freud, Marxism, evolution, relativity, and they no longer know what truth is. It is truly frightening to consider. Hence, the importance of our seminaries. The priests who emerge should be pillars of truth. It will be held against them that they have been formed according to the doctrine of St. Thomas. They will be attacked all the more because of the light of truth and common sense they will possess. They will not be pardoned for having the truth against which all errors clash. Hence the importance of founding universities near our seminaries. I hope that one will be able to be founded in each country. If at the beginning they are as simple as can be, at least the professors will teach the truth, not only for future priests, but also to laymen called to hold important positions in society. Thus formed, these will possess such a power of reasoning and of persuasion as to be able to convince all opposition. Thanks to the clarity of their ideas, they will be able to exert an influence in society. But if Thomism is no longer taught in the universities, nor Catholic doctrine in the seminaries, where will one go to find the light of truth? Numerous are the pontifical documents written about the doctrine of St. Thomas. It is truly the philosophy of the Church, hence the philosophy of God, that by which every reasonable man and every Christian should live. Pope Leo XIII writes, quote, "To the Church he entrusted all the truths which he had taught, in order that it might keep and guard them, and with lawful authority explain them. And at the same time he commanded all nations to hear the voice of the Church, as if it were his own, threatening those who would not hear it with everlasting perdition. Thus it is manifest that man's best and surest teacher is God, the source and principle of all truth, and the only begotten Son, who is in the bosom of the Father, the way, the truth, and the life, the true light which enlightens every man, and to whose teaching all must submit. And they shall be taught of God." John 6:45. End quote. Unfortunately, the liberals, who demand freedom of teaching while they allow any kind of teaching to be taught, multiply obstacles for the Church. One could add that in our day it is against us that the obstacles are multiplied. It is, after all, unheard of that, under the very eyes of the Pope and the cardinals responsible for the teaching of the Church, a teaching that is not Catholic should develop. One should not be surprised at what is happening in other universities. Clearly, the first step in a reform would be to give true professors to these universities. How can it be that rabbis and Protestant pastors teach at the Gregorian University in Rome? Moreover, the teaching has become eclectic. One wants to know everything about everything. Encyclopedias are compiled on everything men think, about anything except the truth. I have seen the curriculum for the seminaries in France. Thomism, for example, is not longer the principal doctrine taught in philosophy, but it is studied as one system among others. What will these seminaries become? It is said that some seminaries have more seminarians than others, but what formation do they receive? They will become priests who will think as they like, for whom truth and error are relative. What conviction will they have in preaching? For it is in the truth that we find the courage to speak with authority. If there is no truth, if truth is an option like others, then no real preaching is possible. They will talk about political or social events, a revolution here or there, but they will no longer have a grasp of the true priestly vocation.